So familiar with the tool, familiar with rosebud and thorns, but even if you know those, seeing how you can orchestrate that at scale, I think was really valuable, Patrick. Thank you very much. And you also reminded me how important it is to have a checklist when you have your tools, so you make sure things are locked down, because I have that problem too.
Well, I was just going to say that, sort of what Mark was saying, that knowing your technology, knowing it well enough to know how best to use it. There's a lot of different options. Mural is great. There's a lot of other ones that you might be familiar with. We all know the Zoom situation where they had Zoom bombing going on because Zoom didn't know their technology as well, right? And so learning how to use it, and so that way you can build the things like what Patrick did for us, so that way it facilitated a wonderful conversation. So bottom line for me is know your tool, and then the scaling becomes a possibility. It's really neat.
And I will just add having the directions right there, dropping things in the chat so that people can read was very helpful, and I think can help to make the experience a lot better. Thank you.
I like to be very quick. Here's how to use the tool. Exercise that you use that really increased my confidence.
We are going to record this session as of now. So if you have any objections to being recorded, you are welcome to leave and watch the recording later. But if you wish to participate, this is an educational experience. We are working together to create that both for ourselves now and for others later. And to help make that go, I've got a couple tips for you in the chat. So, and for those of you who know Maggie Chumbley, you will recognize Maggie Chumbley and Judy Reese's fabulous uses of chat to amplify what we're doing. So we encourage you during our time together to stay present, to mute and unmute respectfully. We're not going to control that. You're all adults, so you're welcome to take care of your own muting. We encourage you to keep your camera on and use the chat on topic. So the chat is open. Feel free to chat away with each other to amplify what we're doing in the large group session, and take notes and get involved. So quick about. So our time together, we are scheduled to be here for 90 minutes. I know I have heard from some of you that you will have to leave early. That's fine. Say goodbye, nicely, and go on your way. And again, you will get the recording. Our purpose is, as we talked about, to dive into large group work. This is in association both with the course that we put together and with Luma Institute. And at the end, ideally, you'll come out having learned some new things, explored some ways that this group size idea will impact your own work. And you'll get inspired to go ahead and do some work of your own. And Patrick and I were talking beforehand about large groups and when large groups are right. And one of the things that he mentioned is that, here in the US, we just came off of a 3-day holiday, 3-day weekend, where typically we all get together in large groups as families in social gatherings. And with our friends and our neighbors, but it's been a little challenging. So I'm just kind of curious. I'd love to hear from some folks. Have you found ways to get together and gather in large groups during this COVID time?
Well, I'll chime in. A lot of conferences have been going online. So the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychologists went online and had large groups and sessions there. And another conference later in the fall for in-group. The Interdisciplinary Network for Group Researchers has an online conference. So I think a lot of conferences, for me as an academic, an egghead scientist, that's a lot of group gatherings that way. I've also convinced my elderly parents to turn on their video camera now, so we've been able to gather as a family and be able to do that. So that's been my large groups. I'm sure there's many others.
Has anybody found a way to do that in person? Anybody have anything different?
So I attended a wedding on the beach, but I mean, this is different, but we all had masks and we were at least 15 feet away and there were maybe 50 people. So that's the largest group and no one touched each other. No one really came near each other. But that's it. That's the only thing I've attended.
Well, I'm sure we have more ideas or more ways to do that. But, you know, frankly, I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Patrick, because Patrick, maybe you have a different way for us to get into this conversation later on.
Yeah, I certainly do. And thanks, Elise. I'm happy to take it over at this point. First of all, thanks again for having me over. This is fantastic to join the group. Elise and I have known each other through a meetup group that I run in Portland called Portland Design Thinkers. I see a couple of our PDT advisory group on here as well. Thanks, Anya. Hi, how are you? And so I'm a big admirer of the work that Elise does, and it seemed natural for us to get together and do something like this at some point. I want to talk about the idea here, which is when can large groups be useful to us when we're having meetings as one of the ways of doing meetings. Sometimes a lot of us shy away from having really big groups, and there are good reasons for that. But I want to make the argument and maybe illustrate that a little bit by talking and walking us through some ways that large groups can be really, really useful sometimes if we're careful about selecting those. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to lead brainstorming sessions, but also to do some other productive stuff with large groups as well. As Elise mentioned, I work with Luma Institute. Luma is based in Pittsburgh, but the work that we do is global. We help build design thinking capability in the service of innovation for individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. We help them build a culture of literacy around design thinking and human-centered design. And that's work that I've enjoyed doing for about 6 years with Luma. It's really rewarding work. But one of the great things that I get to do is talk with and facilitate large groups all the time. And many of you, I don't know how many of you are familiar with C. Northcote Parkinson. He's a British naval historian and author of lots of books. The most famous of those books was his 1957 bestseller, Parkinson's Law. And some of you may be familiar with Parkinson's Law, which says that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Probably a principle that many of us are familiar with, right? But he's also pretty well known for what he called the coefficient of inefficiency. And that calculated that a meeting of just 5 people is the ideal number for getting things done. He said that the problem, as Parkinson saw it, was that the number of 5 people swiftly expands to 9, and the 2 of the 9 tend to be what he called merely ornamental people who nobody really has the heart to exclude. And then above 9, he said the quality of meetings very quickly degrades, and that once the meeting reaches 20 people, it's pretty much useless in his determination. The reason being that he justified, he said most of those people present are not contributing. They're all staring at their phones or their laptops. They're pretending to take notes while they're in fact looking at Facebook. They're trying not to fall asleep. They're talking to each other. They're arguing, or they're forming alliances and lobbies. And while this may have been largely true in 1957, I think it's not necessarily true of all meetings. There's certainly a seed of truth in there, but I want to question the coefficient of inefficiency a little bit here with this. Another book some of you also may be familiar with, written by a guy named Dave Gray about 10 years ago. Dave Gray is actually a Portlander, a fellow Portlander, and leads the design agency Explain here. Well, we've learned a lot about meetings and effective work culture since 1957. And when in 2010, when Dave Gray wrote Brainstorming, he synthesized a lot of that new understanding. He takes the position that creating an environment for creative thinking and innovation can be a real challenge, especially if we're trying to use industrial age management processes to do so. His insight with the book, which he wrote in Brainstorming, was that understanding and embracing game mechanics can be a really powerful catalyst for engaging with more open-ended problems for which there's no single correct solution. This is particularly true in the creatively driven knowledge work of today's business world, which calls for constant innovation. The basic insight here is that most business processes rely upon a really solid, secure chain of cause and effect. And that's true if you're manufacturing, if you're a supply chain situation, if any kind of a process, the idea is to make that as simple and definitive and iron out all the inefficiencies, because you know exactly what you're creating at the end of it. But that's very rarely true for many organizations today. Today, the creative problem solving really requires a different approach. Not a chain, but really it's more of a framework for exploration, for experimentation, and for trial and error. And the path to the perfect outcome is not clear, and it may in fact change as the marketplace changes, as the competitive landscape changes, and as customer expectations change, which is all very true today. So this work is like an ongoing voyage of discovery. And like all voyages, they're likely to include failure. Our job as creative problem solvers is to maximize the value of the exploration while minimizing the risk of the failures. And even where possible, to turn the failures to our advantage. Incidentally, that's exactly what design thinking is all about. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about design thinking because this is not that, but all of this is rooted in the fundamental principles of design thinking. So one of the best ways to do that is by embracing the exploratory mechanics of games, which is kind of what design thinking methods are based on. And fundamentally, what that means is, as you can see in the right of these two figures, is that requires a lot of open-ended problem solving and thinking. Sometimes we call that divergent thinking as opposed to convergent thinking. And divergent thinking is, well, convergent thinking is something that we're all very familiar with. It's taking a lot of something and reducing it down to smaller bits, right? We're synthesizing it. We're thinking critically or analytically about it. We're looking for patterns or themes. We're reducing, we're down selecting. And we're all very, very comfortable with that. In fact, we're taught to do that in school. Almost all of us have had somebody who taught us how to be critical thinkers, and we're pretty good at it because we're natural problem finders and pattern seekers. What we're not as good at, and what most of us are not taught to do, is its opposite, which is divergent thinking. And it's almost literally the very opposite of convergent thinking. It's where we're starting with nothing and we're generating a lot of something, information, ideas, insights, whatever that is. And the key about divergent and convergent thinking is that what we want to do is they're both really important, but we need to keep them separate. We can't do them at the same time. Because if we start to do both convergent thinking and divergent thinking at the same time, all we're doing is convergent thinking. All we're doing is selecting and reducing. There's great value in creating choices before we make choices. And that's really what this is all about. And that's what this process is. A really good, anybody who's familiar with design thinking would know that that's what this is. It's this alternating dance between creating choices and making choices. The divergent part is where we're creating choices for ourselves. And then the convergent part is where we're synthesizing those, we're making choices. And what I want to focus on is the utility of this divergent way of thinking and this posture that we take especially for large meetings, because this is where they come in very, very useful. As Joe very well pointed out, making choices is not necessarily something that is easy to do for large groups, but large groups are excellent at divergent thinking. And when we have lots of different perspectives coming in from lots of different people. This is also why a very diverse group of stakeholders in that meeting is really to our benefit. The more different kinds of thinking, when we're in a divergent mindset and posture, the more different kinds of minds that we have in that room, the better off we're going to be, whether it's a virtual room or a real room. And I want to, Linus Pauling, the two-time Nobel Prize winning chemist and physicist, also put this very well. He said the best way to get a good idea is to have a lot of ideas. This is what he's talking about. Many of us have this natural tendency to rush straight to solutions and to rush to what we think is one single best solution instantly. Just give me the answer. We're going to take that and we're going to run with it. That's almost always a terrible idea. What we want to do is to start out with a big giant pool of ideas or information that we're going to use to synthesize into insights in the discovery process when we're trying to frame the problem that we're solving. And to make sure that we're coming up with as much as we can before we start making those choices. What this can look like is something like this, if we're doing this in a physical setting, where we've generated a lot of data points, and I'm not sure what exactly is on here. Maybe it's observations, but we've generated a lot of those, and we've been able to begin to put them together and to synthesize these massive amount of data. And we can benefit from a wide array of perspectives and thoughts, and divergent thinking is a gift wherever we can do that. Again, just to touch on this idea of design thinking and the design thinking process again, anybody who's familiar with design thinking is probably a little bit familiar with the double diamond of design. Created a way of visualizing a design thinking process by the UK Design Council a couple of decades ago. And that's exactly what it is. It's this idea of splitting creative problem solving into making sure that you're solving the right problem or doing the right thing, and then solving that problem, or that is doing things right. The left side of that double diamond is all about discovery. It's empathy. It's the process of ethnographic or participatory customer research. It's embedding yourself with people to understand what their real world problems and challenges are, and how they feel, and what drives them from an emotional and behavioral standpoint. What are the pains and difficulties and challenges that they have? And using those insights to frame up the actual problem that we're solving, and only then beginning to solve that problem. And you'll see that both of the sides of this diamond include both divergent and convergent thinking. The divergent side of this is equally applicable to both problem framing and to solving the problems. And we're going to look at both ways of doing that today. So one of the things I like about Lucid meetings is that they have this great taxonomy of 16 of the different kinds of business meetings. And the truth is that divergent thinking applies to a lot of these. First of all, let's look at the bottom three: broadcasts, training, and communities of practice. Any kind of a broadcast, an all-hands meeting, the more people, the better, right? You've got a webinar right now. We've got upwards, I think, of 60 people in here. I'd say that classifies as a large meeting by any standard. 60 people is, and we're going to work with you all in just a minute. So large meetings are going to be certainly useful there. Any kind of a training is going to be useful. Again, what we're going to be doing right now is training, both a little bit of a lecture format and some application hands-on based training. And that can be done with the right structure and with facilitation. That's a really useful way of using large groups. Any kind of community of practice. I run a meetup myself. I know what it's like to work with 60 or 70 or 100 people. That can be really powerful way, again, of leveraging the utility of large groups of people. But also, if we're doing something like a retrospective, any kind of a review, again, what we want are a wide divergent set of thoughts on this. If we've only got 2 or 3 sets of eyeballs and perspectives on something, when there were a lot of a much larger number of stakeholders involved in a situation, we can always benefit with a larger number of perspectives on doing, for example, a retro or some kind of a win-loss review. Because each person has their own individual thoughts on that, and they may have encountered or seen or experienced things that we didn't. And that can also be a great way of working with customers as well. We are not our customers, and our customers are always going to have perspectives on their actual experience that we, as the producers or the designers of that experience, may not be experiencing, may not be familiar with. Design workshops, team building, kickoffs, research, user testing, if we're doing ethnographic research, or if we're doing any kind of participatory research. The great thing about qualitative research is that you don't necessarily need large numbers of people to do that. Certainly not in the way that we would look for statistical significance in those numbers. But you're certainly going to be getting into the dozens of people when you're starting to do that, and generating all that information can be done in a single setting with lots of people, as we'll see in just a moment, rather than just one by one. Any kind of discovery process can benefit from this. And finally, solution brainstorms. Again, a great opportunity for us to any kind of a brainstorm divergent situation. We're going to have a lot of opportunity there to leverage large groups and to work divergently. So before we go into the next section of this, I want to pause for a moment and see if we have any questions from anybody. We've got a couple of minutes for questions or thoughts.
Laura asked a quick question about the difference between workshops and training. So just in terms of the taxonomy, that the distinction with a workshop is the workshops are about doing work, right, as a group. So strategic planning is often culminating in a strategic planning workshop where you come out with a set of documents that you'll actually use. Whereas training is very much about the transfer of knowledge and skills from one group to another. What else? Has anybody had any aha moments on anything Patrick said yet? Like something he said that is hitting you in a way that you haven't heard quite before, or a question? And feel free to unmute at this point.
Patrick, how do you like to use this when you're planning meetings? Can you just talk about your process for using this tool?
This particular one that we're looking at here?
Yeah.
Well, when I'm planning meetings, I guess the most important thing to do is that, for me, is always to understand what is the outcome that you want to have at the end of the meeting and work backwards from there, right? The worst thing you can do is to go into a meeting without any sense of what you're trying to accomplish. And I know that Elise will agree with me that that's all too often happens with many meetings. People just go through it because it's habit. Here's the time for the meeting. Let's all sit down and see if anything productive can come out of that. That's the worst possible way to bring a group of people together. I would always know, what is it that I absolutely have to get out of the meeting? What do we need to have accomplished by the end of that session, that meeting, that workshop, whatever you want to call it? Meeting may in fact be a terrible word to use for anything, because I know Elise is a big fan of naming meetings by what you're going to be achieving rather than by the generic catch-all meeting, because meeting doesn't say anything. It's just it's one of those weasel words. So what are you going to achieve, and work backwards to select the different ways of getting there to achieve that very specific outcome. If what we're going to achieve is something that requires a lot of different mindsets, a lot of different perspectives, and the input from, and will benefit from the input of many people, then I will begin to create an agenda that that does include divergent activities that allow people to work together. But if it is much more of a decision-making meeting or session, then I'm going to think more carefully about that. I'm going to think who are the key stakeholders who need to be involved in making these key decisions, and making sure that they and only they are there. And hopefully that meeting itself will have been preceded by something where we created choices so that we can come and make choices.
So Patrick, I'm seeing some questions about how you get people involved, right? Like especially folks who are timid about speaking up, even though they want to be involved, because we know most people do. Is it time for us to practice getting involved?
I think it is. Because that's a great question. Getting involved is maybe one of those things that we want to park that in the parking lot and return to that in about 30 or 40 minutes. because I think that question may answer itself over the next little bit. So because we are all remote, whoops, sorry, let me go back to my screen here. Because we're all remote, we're going to use a digital whiteboard platform called Mural. We're going to try to give you a sense of what this kind of work feels like and how it can be managed. And because one of the things about large meetings is that they require a lot more structure than other meetings might to help us do this work, we're going to use Mural. It's a digital whiteboard that replicates many of the greatest functions of a normal whiteboard, but it makes collaborating with a distributed team of just about any size easy and pretty effective. Hopefully everybody here watched the 4 short video tutorials Elise sent out earlier this week. If you didn't, don't panic. To help you get a very quick sense of the small handful of Mural tools that we'll be using today, we'll spend just a few minutes on a brief hands-on orientation. But for the moment, we're just going to watch, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quickly.
And because we're a large group, we went ahead and broke all of the Mural things into different segments by last name. So if your last name, as we get into this, and Patrick's going to show us what to do, but when you go into Mural, find the board that matches your last name. So the first letter of your last name.
We're going to do that in just a moment. As soon as I can get back to the share button over here.
We see your slide still.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna in a moment. I'm gonna get back to my video panel. Here we go. Floating meeting controls is what I want. Stop share. Okay, I'm gonna share a new screen here.
Oh, it's so nice to see you all for a second. Hi, everybody. Oh, there you go.
All right. Do we see, let's get familiar with the basic Mural tools we'll need?
Nope, we see your slide.
Oh.
And now I see friends. Hi, friends. Nope, those are slides. Experimentation for the win.
Are we seeing, let's get familiar with the basic Mural tools we'll need now?
Nope.
All right, Zoom. We're going to get there in just a second. Maybe share screen, desktop 1. How about now?
Yes, victory is ours. We have minimized failure, right onto the road to success.
What I'm going to do is ask everyone in a moment. You're all going to pop into this Mural, and you're going to have a go at doing this. But for the moment, watch me. I'm just going to model what I'd like you to do. Everyone will have one of these. You'll be able to choose your own. You can see there's a whole lot of those down here, and you'll just be able to go down and choose one that doesn't have someone's name on it. And you're going to write your name right there by double clicking, right? And then we can zoom in by pinching on your trackpad, or you can scroll on your mouse to zoom in. I'm going to change the text here again, once again, by double clicking to read my name. I'm going to put that in there once again, just to get a sense of how we write on these little sticky notes. This one says copy and paste me, then put my copy in that box over there. So again, if you know how to copy and paste, this is pretty easy, right? Command C, Command V, and I'm just going to drag it and drop it right on top of there. Anybody who's familiar with basic copy paste and drag and drop commands is going to be good with that. We're going to change this one, the color, we're going to change that to pink. So on that, I'm going to right click, right? I'm going to left click or whatever whichever button it is for you. And you'll see up here the color. And if I click on that, I can choose pink, right? You've got a whole little menu up here of things that you can do with it. I could change the size of the font by clicking up or down here. I could change the format. I could change the font itself. I could do some simple formatting and justification options in there. Everything that you need is in there. I could give that thing a border if I wanted to that way. Some real simple, very straightforward word processing tools in that little ribbon up there. Grab a blue Post-it over here from the supply closet and stick it here. The supply closet is all the way over here at the left, right? So if I click, I'm going to go up here to where it says text and click on that, and you'll see this little sideboard opens up. And it wants me to grab a blue Post-it from the supply closet and stick it here. So I'm just going to grab one of these in the little sheaf and drag it right over there, right? I want to make that a little bit smaller, so the little blue button here allows me to shrink that down, and I can move it right into the spot there. I could grab other colors. I could grab larger ones or different sizes. If I wanted to change that to a different size note, I could again go over here and change it to a 3x5, pretty easy, right? Finally, make this note bold and drag it to below number 3. Oh, that's not finally, actually. Make it bold. We saw those commands over here, bold, and we're going to drag it, pinch out a little bit and drag it to below number 3. Number 6 says zoom in as far as you can on this box, then zoom out so you can see everything on the entire board. I may have made this small enough so I can't really zoom in any farther. We've got a lot of these on the board, but to zoom out so that you can see the whole board, I'm just pinching and pinching on here, and you can see what we're going to be working with here in just a moment. And finally, scale me to about 4 times the size. I showed you how to do that. Roughly about there, I'd say, right? So, Elise, I'm going to let you now drop a couple of links in there and allow people to go over to their board, choose one of these. Some people already have.
Yep.
And start playing around with that. Let's work pretty quickly on this. We're gonna take just about 4 minutes to this. I think most of you can do this in about 4 minutes. Choose one of those that doesn't have a name on it and walk through those 7 quick tasks just to familiarize yourself very quickly with the basic tools that we'll be using on Mural.
And feel free to holler if you've got questions or anything like that. Also seeing in the chat as those of you are finishing up, there's some good conversation in there about how do you deal with purpose and how often people don't. So. All right. I see a couple of people are coming in late. Let me go ahead and drop the links in for you again. They should be easy to spot in the chat once I put them in here because they're red and flagged. All right. There you go. Alyssa's having trouble zooming in. So you talked about pinching and squeezing. There's also that little, did you show them that little thing in the bottom right-hand corner? Because that's super useful. Yeah. So in this bottom right-hand corner there on Patrick's screen, he's kind of hovering over it. There's this little zoom thing, and there's a plus and minus button that helps you get closer and closer to where you want to be. Oh, it's bigger. There you go. Cool. Look at all of those greens and blues and pinks going on.
You mentioned a plus and minus button?
Yeah. So in the so if you see in Patch, if you go over to the Zoom screen, you can see it. It's in the bottom right-hand corner on Mural. There's a little ghost of the map that you can zoom into and zoom out of. Yeah, Mark points out you can double click anywhere to just get a new note and then change the color. So all kinds of options there. So are we ready to start doing something that lets us have a lot of ideas or observations?
Let's do that. Let's move over. So I'm right now, what I want to talk about is a method, a really nice divergent method that we can use with large numbers of people called roast, thorn, bud. Different variations out around here, but this is actually a method that originated with the Boy Scouts of America, believe it or not, where for every sort of experience they had, they were encouraged afterwards to share out one positive thing from that experience, one challenge or something that was difficult for them in that experience, and one opportunity that they saw, something that had potential that they found in that. And it's a really nice framework for codifying data. It's a very powerful way of doing that. We're going to use roast, thorn, bud right now as a way of thinking about the problem that Elise touched on at the very beginning, that that circumstance of going to a party. Roast, thorn, bud is a great way of identifying things as positive, negative, or having potential. It's fantastic when we're doing customer discovery, for example. If we want to create a journey map of a customer's experience, roast, thorn, bud is a great way of codifying the information that we gather from people when we're exploring, observing a customer experience for a journey map. But it's useful in lots of other ways as well. If we want to do a retrospective of any kind, we have a whole lot of opinions about something, a situation or a circumstance or an experience that we want to find ways to improve it. It's a great way to start. And it's a really good technique to use when capturing many diverse perspectives on a topic from large numbers of stakeholders. Helps us codify that research data. It invites input from all team members, and it facilitates productive discussion. Again, you can see the metaphor here is that of a rose, where the warm feedback, the rose itself that everybody likes, that's what's working. That's the warm feedback, right? The thorn, which we sort of arbitrarily choose blue to use, it's the cool feedback, right? It's what not working. It was a problem, it was difficult, it was time consuming, it was challenging, it was painful, it was unpleasant. Anything in that regard is a thorn. And we want to separate thorns from buds, right? We all have this tendency to say, oh, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. Yes, that's true, but we first have to identify what the actual problem is before there's an opportunity in there. And so we want to think of buds as being a little bud. It could become a rose with some love and some care, but it's sort of like it's an opportunity that doesn't have a how built in to it yet, right? Something that has potential. And so what we can do once we've generated a lot of rose, thorn, buds is, as you can see, this person is writing not just a single word, but a little bit of explanation here so that anybody reading it who's not familiar with it understands what we're trying to say about that observation. It's not just a single word that says technology. It's what about technology? What is the thorn? What is the rose, right? And once we've got a lot of those, we can start to create something like this. We can begin to synthesize that. You know, we talk about divergent and convergent, but really in between the divergent and the convergent activities are what we sometimes refer to as emergent activities. That means we have to play around with this stuff, spend a little time synthesizing and looking for patterns and themes before we are quite ready to make decisions and do that convergent. And that's what we would typically do here with rose, thorn, buds, is we would start to cluster them according to patterns. What affinities do they have? And look for themes in there. And if we're clever, we can figure out what those themes are, and we can turn those into actionable insights, where each one of those represents an opportunity that we can solve, right? By how might we, make this better, or how might we leverage this insight for a really innovative, unorthodox, delightful solution. And designers spend a lot of time using these methods in just this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to try rose, thorn, bud here, and we're going to come back to that topic that Elise brought up at the beginning of the session, where she asked everybody, how did you feel about a party or social gathering that you may have joined recently? In the US here, we had Labor Day. Probably a few of us out there went to some sort of a very carefully stage managed Labor Day party or social gathering. But for all of you who have over the past couple of months maybe gone to some kind of a social gathering and been quite careful about it, it's no doubt been a little bit different from social gatherings that you've been to before, February or March. So what we want to do is capture your observations about those social gatherings, those parties, using Rose, Thorn, Bud. And you're going to see down here a set of sticky notes that's going to allow you to do that. Now, real quickly, some of you may not have gone to any kind of a social gathering at all, and that's perfectly fine, right? In that case, no need to worry so much about the roses. Let's use the thorns here to describe why didn't you go? What were you afraid of specifically, right? In as much detail as possible. What very specifically made you uncomfortable about the idea of a social gathering, physical social gathering, and what potential opportunities or solutions do you see that might make you comfortable going for the buds? So if you did go, what we're going to do here in a moment is we're going to ask you to pick a set of sticky notes. Again, one that doesn't have somebody's name on it. You'll put your name on it like that. You'll write your name in the designated spot. And then you'll write down any observations that you had about that experience as roses, thorns, and buds. So for example, I went to a Labor Day party over here. It was in somebody's backyard last weekend. They had set up a big, hung a sheet on the side of their home, and we all socially distanced while I worked the grill, and we had some drinks and watched a movie on the side of the building. And it was quite fun. It wasn't perfect, of course, but one of the things I really liked about it was that it was relatively easy to socially distance in my friend's backyard. Everyone was able to keep 8 or 10 feet between ourselves, and without any trouble, we would go up to the grill when we needed to grab something, and it was relatively easy. One of the challenges that I noticed was that we couldn't go inside this person's house for the bathroom, right? Now that was not a problem for me. I could just duck around the corner. She had a big tool shed in the backyard, and I and the rest of the fellas could just, anytime we wanted to, walk around back behind the tool shed. But that was more difficult for the ladies. So I noticed that one of the things that might make it easier is an opportunity here is how do we make it easier for ladies at that social gathering to use the bathroom outdoors? You'll notice I don't have a specific solution baked into this. I'm just like, here's an opportunity, right? I don't know how we're going to do this exactly, but it seems like an opportunity here to make this better. There's a bud there, right? Maybe one of the possible solutions is something like the good old Tinkle Bell. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these little portable urinals for ladies. I find them hilarious for reasons I can't explain. Maybe that's it. But the point here is, right, we're just focusing right now on the large opportunity, right? So we're going to ask you to write down your opportunities as roses, thorns, and buds. One observation per sticky note, right? This is your own personal observation. You're not trying to imagine what somebody else feels. You're talking about you personally. Try to get at least 2 of each color. If you've got more than 2, great, by all means, knock yourself out. But we're going to work individually and in silence, and we're going to take 5 minutes for this, right? So don't overthink it. Work quickly. You all had something that you were able to think about, but we're gonna work on that and pick your own one. You'll see the instructions over here next to everybody. Are there any clarifying questions on what you're going to do for the next 5 minutes? Clarifying questions. Sound okay? All right, I'm going to start our timer at 5 and create your roses, thorns, and buds.
Sorry, but somebody's moving the mural board And so it's challenging to be able to type in room E and L, or E through L.
Okay. Let's see.
I think it's a user named Toby that keeps grabbing it. It's like grabbing the whole mat.
Yep, got it. Thanks.
I should have locked those down.
There's always got to be that guy, Toby.
Hey, Tom,
That's your facilitator's fault. I should have locked those down so they're not easily movable.
You're off the hook, Toby. It's all on Patrick.
It's all on me.
Unintended learning. Yay.
thanks for that.
I got you back, Toby.
All right.
All right. So wherever you are, let's pause right there. In sort of a real world setting, we'd probably want to give ourselves a little bit more time than 5 minutes. But divergent activities are ones that tend to go pretty quick, right? We don't have to put in the synthesis and the hard thinking time where we're having to make hard decisions. Any divergent activity, we want to move pretty quickly on that because we don't want people to overthink it. We want to overcome that filter that people have of, oh, I'm afraid to write down something stupid, because we'd rather have that information, and we can eliminate and discard the things that maybe aren't as useful to us later. We want to create choices first and make choices. Creating choices can always go faster than making choices. So we've got a pretty big set of, Elise, were we using 2 different mural boards or just the one?
We were using 4.
So we were using all 4. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So with we're just going to show my screen here. I instead of flipping between all of them, but wherever you are, you can see that you've got a pretty big number of roses, thorns, and buds out there. There's a lot of observations about what social distance, COVID-safe parties are like these days. We've got how many people? We've got 50 people here today. That's potentially 9, possibly more times each person. Somebody do the math for me real quick. I'm a designer, not a mathematician. What's 50 times 9?
450.
450. That's potentially 450 observations. That's a really powerful data set for us to draw upon, right?
Well, and especially when you consider that when I asked the question up front, we had an opportunity, given time, to hear from 2.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And it was there wasn't a lot of participation for all the reasons why people can sometimes be a little bit anxious about shouting out in front of a large number of people. What we did here was we made this individual and in silence. You were only responsible for your own observations without the judgment of other people. And we can, and everyone's working concurrently, so we can turn out a lot of information in a very short time, really useful information this way. So again, rose, thorn, bud, great way of codifying research data, generating and codifying research data, making sure that we invite input from all stakeholders and team members. It's very easy for a group of 100 people to do this, or 50 people to do this, whether it's physically or remotely. Facilitates productive discussion, because what we could do at this point is begin to cluster these. We don't have time to do it today, but what we could do is begin to cluster these, all of these roses, thorns, and buds, and to begin to look for patterns, right?
Yeah, and as a scientist involved with this, this is exactly what we do with qualitative data. We take all this massive amount of data, massive amount of ideas like you just generated here, and then narrow those down by looking at the themes and that sort of thing, and then identifying through that convergent process the key ideas or the key potential solutions to problems. This is wonderful.
Yeah, fantastic. So we gave rose, thorn, bud a try. In a real world setting, I'd probably want to give people about 15 minutes, but not much more than that is needed for them to write down some of the key observations that they have. And when you've got a large number of people, you're casting a very wide net. So you're going to capture a lot of disparate information that way. So we've got our roses, thorns, and buds. Let's imagine that we actually did cluster these now, which is going to take a little bit longer because that would have been a convergent exercise. But let's imagine that we clustered these and that we generated some interesting insights around that. And we've set ourselves up to maybe solve some of these problems. What we could do at this point is we're going to use another method that we call a creative matrix. There's lots of different ways of doing broad ideation and brainstorming. But brainstorming does tend to be one of the ones that happens. Brainstorming has a lot of great things about it, but also a lot of challenges with brainstorming. There's the fact that you know, some personalities can dominate a brainstorm. Some people aren't just creative in that way of shouting out things in front of a room of their peers. There's the anchoring effect, where the first idea that pops up is the one that everyone spends the next 30 minutes circling. There's groupthink, all the kinds of things that happen with a creative matrix that make it, I mean, with a brainstorm. A creative matrix is another way of coming up with lots of ideas in a short time, particularly when we want innovative, unorthodox ideas. And you can see a little picture of what a creative matrix looks like here. Essentially, it's a very literally named method. It's a matrix for creativity. Over here on the top, you'll see in the top left corner, a single overarching challenge statement that we're trying to solve for. How might we increase civic engagement on voter registration day and beyond, right? So with a typical brainstorm, you just throw that out there and ask for input from anybody in the room. We're going to bring a little bit more structure to that. Off the top of this, you'll see you've got 4 columns, and at the top of each column, you have different sort of subsets of that challenge. How might we spark public interest in societal issues? How might we increase attendance at meetings and forums? How might we expand participation, and so on? Over on the left side, you will see ways of enabling unconventional solutions to those problems. And in the middle of this, you can see where a group of people were generating ideas at the intersections of that challenge statement and the enabler, the ways of enabling a solution. So how might we spark public interest in societal issues? One of the things here is a DIY campaign video commercial, right? And some of these have little sketches on them too, because as many of you will know, we want to work visually whenever possible. We think more creatively when we're being visual. So what people did here was they generated a lot of ideas at the intersections of something on the top, which is a category related to people or a problem related to people, and then ways of enabling solutions over there. And that's really what a creative matrix is. It's a method for generating large numbers of creative, unorthodox ideas from a group. And we want to use it when we already have a pretty good understanding of the problem that we're trying to solve. And you want to generate a big divergent pool of ideas. We want to create a lot of choices. Like as Linus Pauling said, we don't want one idea, we want a bunch of ideas to play around with and to begin mashing up and playing with. So we're gonna play around with the creative matrix here in just a moment. This is what a large creative matrix might look like if we were gonna create one around this idea of social gatherings. You'll see at the top, we've got how might we reimagine in-person social gatherings during the pandemic that are COVID safe, fun, and even more enjoyable than before. That sounds like a pretty provocative and challenging way of thinking, but that's what we're going to aim for. We might get some interesting ideas by thinking outside the box that way. At the tops of the columns, we see introverts, different kinds of people who have different needs around around a social gathering. So we're going to solve that problem for people who are introverted. How about people who are in a partnership? People who have special needs around being especially safe, immunocompromised people, and kids. Totally different subset of needs the kids have. Over on the left side, you'll see different ways of enabling solutions. What about using rituals and activities for working with introverts or couples, right? Things like welcoming and greetings, or crafting and making stuff. Things like food and drink or games and competitions. Tech and digital media, an obvious choice. We always want to, it's nice to put that one in there as an easy fallback for us. How can we work with the environment itself, right? And use things like permanent structures and gathering places, wayfinding, signage, mobile environments. What about engaging all of our senses? What is there a way to use to use the sense of touch or taste or smell in interesting new ways for a social gathering for any of these people? And our job here is to write down an idea here, something kind of crazy, right? And then we'll simply put that where at the intersection that we're working at. And we don't have to go in any particular order. We can work anywhere we want, because we're going to be working, as we did with Rose Thorn Bud, individually and in silence, right? You're working totally on your own, coming up with as many ideas as you can. Down here at the bottom, this final row, you'll see sort of a wild card. If you've got an idea on how to make social gatherings better for couples, and it doesn't have anything to do with one of these 4 enablers, we still want that idea. You're just going to write that idea and put it down here, right? We don't want to lose it. It's great. So anything is on the table. So a few tips for this, right? We're going to generate ideas at the intersections. We're going to work individually and in silence. 1 idea per sticky note, right? We want actionable ideas. Don't just write down Facebook. What with Facebook, right? What are we going to do with Facebook? What's the idea? And this is incredibly important. Write down the first thing that pops into your head, right? It doesn't matter if it's feasible, viable, legal, actually, literally, it doesn't matter. Any idea is a good idea at this point. We are creating choices. They don't have to be good ideas. Write down whatever pops in your head. Any idea at this point is a good idea, right? So what Elise has done is given everybody a creative matrix. You all are going to be working on slightly smaller versions of this just to make it a little bit easier for you, right? So breakout team number 1 is going to use this one. Breakout team number 2, you're going to be working in teams of 5. But again, you're working essentially alone. Don't worry about what the other people are writing down. You focus on your own ideas, as many as you can in 8 minutes. To make this a little bit more interesting, we're going to make it a competition. I think we've got about 10 teams.
We got 10 teams right? Of 4, actually.
Yeah.
And we're going to send you off into breakouts. If you've never been in a breakout before, it's you're going to be whisked away into a private little video that is between you and 4 other people. And you type away in there like mad so that you can dominate the other teams with your massively excellent, creative, not good ideas in volume.
We'll give everybody 1 point for every idea you come up with. 1 point for every idea you come up with. Don't worry about it. It's a good idea. The points are given no matter what. And again, this is not a consensus thing. You don't have to ask other people about your idea. We're doing this individually and in complete silence. Put a little music on in the background for 8 minutes. Any clarifying questions about what you're going to do?
All right, have fun.
Have fun. Go at them.
So usually when this timer hits, then people start to click back to come here. And they didn't. They were like...
They were still in it.
They were still in it. They were absolutely...
The additional 30 seconds.
That's right. They're gonna use that.
Competition does.
Competition is good. Hi, welcome back. Welcome back.
Hi there.
Did you guys win?
My partner was coming up with a lot of ideas. I was impressed. I'm reading through some of the other groups right now. I was curious.
It's pretty fun to see all kinds of things that people come up with, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I know everybody will be magically whisked back to join us in 15 seconds. So Wanda, James, did you all win? Karen, did you win this time? No?
Not based on what I added.
That's all right. Every little bit helps. All right, here they come.
Wasn't much help. Wasn't much help this time. I have to watch the recording again.
All right. So, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Okay, have we got everybody back? It looks like we're half back. All right, welcome. So I did something, and Patrick and I did something that was entirely unfair and both wonderful. So one of the things that happens when you're in huge groups like this is you don't actually get a chance to talk to anybody else much because there are too ding dong many people to have a conversation. And here we threw you into a room where you could have actually had a conversation and told you to be quiet. So let's see if we can't rectify that. Because it's time for us to start wrapping up and debriefing. So as the first part of our debrief, what we'd love for you to do is to go back into your same groups and actually get to say hi to these lovely people and have a little bit of a discussion. And while you're in there, count how many ideas you had so you can put them back in the chat and we can declare a winner, please. Also, discuss, how did that feel? What did you notice? And what are you now wondering? All right, so I'm going to open your rooms right back up. You've got 7 minutes. Debrief this a little bit. Share with each other. What was your experience? And we'll see you back in a minute or 7. All right. Fun. So Patrick, while we're having them debrief, what are you noticing? What's coming up for you now?
I noticed that I didn't see a lot of use of the wild card area. And what I, at least on this one screen, and that may be in part because I didn't push it enough. The competition can help a little bit in that, saying you get 1 point for every idea and an additional 20 bonus points if you fill every square, including the wildcard squares, with at least one idea. Force them to think about that a little bit.
I remember when I first experienced this and you also gave us bonus points for pictures. Yeah.
It's, I decided not to go with sketching on this because it's just another, with a really experienced group I might, who's really savvy with Mural, but I didn't see any point in making them feel stressed about having to conquer a new tool.
Well, I think that, that's an important takeaway, right? Like just like we talk about with innovation literacy or facilitation literacy, this kind of thing requires some amount of practice. So once your group habituates to it, you can bust loose a little bit. You can always, in the future, if you want, allow that timer to run itself down and it will whisk you back automatically. And the rest of our friends will join us any second. I know they will. So while they're, oh, it's broken. What is it doing?
Uh-oh.
It's like glitching. We found a glitch in the matrix. Yikes, how do I make them? Oh, it's closed. Okay, here they come. It was so weird.
They were lost in the matrix.
It was the weirdest Zoom glitch. It looked like everybody was stuck off in breakout room forever, which would be delightful, but we just don't have that kind of time. All right, so we're in our last 5 minutes, and I want to do a couple of things. First of all, I want to see the counts. So who has a count from their group? If you can drop your group number and the number of ideas you all had into the chat, that would be delightful, delightful. 21, Laura, what group were you guys in? Go ahead and...
3.
Oh, okay, 21. Oh, 34.
34, group 2, wow.
Yay. 18.
18, these are good numbers.
So 8 minutes, and so we see some. I know there's others out there, but if you start to add all of this up, in 8 minutes, you got a group of people who've come up with Hundreds of ideas in a really short time. 23, cool. Does anybody beat Nancy's group 2? Because 34 is the winner so far. That's pretty awesome.
Lori Lewis's group had 18.
Nice. So we know that while you were together in your breakout groups and then throughout this whole thing, there's some new ideas that we've encountered. There are some things that maybe you'd seen before, but you'd seen in a different way, some tech that maybe you liked, maybe you didn't. You were here and you got to experience the whole thing. And as you went through this journey, you formed some opinions. You formed some takeaways. And what we would like to do as our final wrap up here is kind of hear some of those in a very specific way. So there is an acronym that they use in like the McChrystal group and other groups that's about how you make an email really great for people who need to get the quick takeaway right up top, which is called bottom line up front or BLUF. So what I would love to hear from all of you is the bottom line up front, your takeaway from this event, and specifically in one phrase or sentence, what would you want for people who were not here to watch for if they were going to go ahead and watch this recording later? And for this one, if you'd like to type it into the chat, that would be great. Otherwise, go ahead and just signal and unmute, and we'll go ahead and pass the bottom line around. So does anybody have a bottom line they'd like people to see? Is that you, James? I'll go ahead and unmute. And then James, when you're done, if anybody else wants to, you call them out, okay? But you're definitely waving, but not but muted.
I see some bluffs coming out in the chat.
All right. Anybody want to say something out loud for us?
I will. Oh, go ahead, Mark. You've heard of me enough.
Okay. So familiar with the tool, familiar with rose bud thorns, but even if you know those, seeing how you can orchestrate that at scale, I think was really valuable, Patrick. Thank you very much. And you also reminded me how important it is to have a checklist when you have your tools, so you make sure things are locked down, because I have that problem too.
Yeah.
Joe.
Well, I was just going to say that, sort of what Mark was saying, that knowing your technology, knowing it well enough to know how best to use it. There's a lot of different options. Mural is great. There's a lot of other ones that you might be familiar with. We all know the Zoom situation where they had Zoom bombing going on because Zoom didn't know their technology as well, right? And so learning how to use it, and so that way you can build the things like what Patrick did for us, so that way it facilitated a wonderful conversation. So bottom line for me is know your tool, and then the scaling becomes a possibility. It's really neat.
And I will just add having the directions right there, dropping things in the chat so that people can read was very helpful, and I think can help to make the experience a lot better. Thank you.
I like to be very quick. Here's how to use the tool. Exercise that you use that really increased my confidence.
All right, these are excellent. Thank you so much for these takeaways. I hope you've seen some ways in which you can get a lot of people involved to do a lot of divergent thinking quickly. Patrick, do you have a final last minute?
The only other thing I wanted to add was, as has been noted here by a couple of people, there's lots of other ways of generating lots of ideas in a short time. Google Ventures Design Sprints favors Crazy Eights. Another one is Round Robin. Creative Matrix is one of literally scores of alternatives to brainstorming, and I encourage you all to explore those. And as has been noted, some of the things that we need here for large meetings is got to have structure. Structure around the agenda, structure around the tools that you're using, lots of structure. The best way to leverage those large groups is also to work visually. If people are just shouting stuff out, it's very, very difficult to make the best use of large groups. Writing it down, working visually, using sticky notes is always going to be a much better option. And then, you know, facilitation. You can't just expect those people to come into a room together and manage themselves. You're not going to get good stuff out of them. As Mariano, the CEO of Mural, said last week in announcing their round B funding, he said, when it comes to teams, a bigger team is only better so long as everyone works together. World-class teams recognize the need for a catalyst, someone who calls forth the best in everyone, someone who makes meetings interactive and engaging rather than just talking or listening. We call these unsung heroes facilitators. Being an exceptional digital or remote facilitator is the new core competence. So we are living in a world right now which is largely remote. That is probably not going to change a lot even afterwards. So I encourage all of you to think about building up your facilitation muscles going forward. And finally, thank you so much for joining. It's been a real pleasure, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. We'll send an email with the recording with links to where you can learn more from both Luma and Lucid and Joe and everyone, and all of the exports and the takeaways afterwards. So thank you again so very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to hear all of your ideas.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Just before you go, I just wanted to say thank you so much. Your site is invaluable in so many ways, and your generosity of spirit is well appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Elena.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
And great to see you all. Take care.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Patrick, how do you feel? Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, it's good. It's great.